Hello and welcome back to Humans in 5.
Paleoanthropologists, evolutionary biologists, and paleontologists all have one thing in common: their love of fossils. These researchers and many others examine the shape, age, and content of fossils to learn how organisms lived in the past. But just how does a fossil form? What do these researchers look at when they study a fossil?
So let's start at the very beginning. Michelle and I, and all other living things, are made out of what is known as organic material. Organic material is made out of organic compounds. These organic compounds are largely made of carbon. Living creatures exchange carbon and oxygen as they live. For example, humans breathing oxygen in and breathing carbon out. Now keep carbon in the back of your mind for now. We'll come back to that in a second.
When organisms die, the soft tissues like skin and muscle decompose, leaving only hard tissues such as the skeleton. Now let's say that the skeleton of this organism floats down to the lake floor. As time passes, the skeleton is buried underneath mud and sand that's moved around by the lake. This mud and sand, also called sediment, begins to thicken with the addition of new layers of sediment year after year.
Now remember those organic compounds that are part of living organisms? At this stage, the carbon in these compounds is replaced by the minerals in the sediment that surrounds the skeleton. This process is known as petrification, where the skeleton and the surrounding sediment turns to stone.
Now that the skeleton is buried in stone, groundwater comes up through the layers of sediment and dissolves the bone. This leaves a mold of the shape and size of the bone tissue. The same groundwater passes more minerals through this mold, which creates a cast of the bone tissue, like passing plaster into a mold. Time keeps on passing, and eventually the fossil may make it to the surface of the ground today.
So do you just find fossils lying around on the ground? Well, sometimes you do. Some dinosaur fossils have been found lying on the ground in Alberta in Canada, but other fossils, like the Homo naledi fossils, were found buried underneath layers of soil in a cave in Gauteng province in South Africa.
How you find fossils depends on the type of fossil and how it was deposited in that location. For example, fossils deposited by lake movements may be found in different locations compared to fossils that were left behind by glaciers moving over the landscape across millions of years.
Whew! That's quite a journey for a fossil to make before researchers can even analyze it. Any time a fossil is found is a time for celebration, because it actually is a very unique event. Of course, there are many, many organisms that live and die every day, and have done so in the past too. But the conditions have to be just right for a fossil to be formed. That means that any time we find a fossil, it's really worth getting excited about the kind of information we could gather from it.
So, when you see a news item on finding new fossils, you can think about the long journey it's been on before it even came into the hands of researchers today.
Thanks, and see you next time on Humans in 5.